That's right.
Oh,
This is the guy that's going with Hodgson.
oh, that's fine. Okay. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. We're pleased today to have Susan Sponamore as our clerk today, and we're going to ask her to call the roll.
Senator Boswell, Senator Carpenter, Senator Elkins,
Present.
Senator Girdler, Senator Herron, Senator Madden, Senator Mills, Senator Webb, Senator West, Senator Wheeler,
Here.
Senator Williams,
Here.
Senator Baker, Representative Baker, Representative Bauman, Representative Blanton, Representative Bowling, Representative Bridges,
Here.
Representative Chester Burton,
Present.
Representative Dossett,
Present.
Representative Flannery,
Here.
Representative Fugate,
Here.
Representative Hancock,
Here.
Representative Johnson,
Here.
Representative McCool,
Here.
Representative Miles, Representative Moore,
Here.
Representative Smith, Representative Watkins,
Present.
Representative Wesley, Representative Whitaker, Representative White, Representative Williams, Senator Smith, co-chair, and Chairman Representative Gooch.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, so first thing we need to do is ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting. So moved in second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by like sign. Okay, the minutes do stand approved as read. We're going to go a little bit out of order on the agenda. We have Senator Williams, who's also a member of this committee, and floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. You all have in your packet a BR that in the Senate would say is being shikalized today. We're just getting out in front. It's not perfect, like about everything else I produce, but this is out for discussion. And it's very simple, even though it's 13 pages, there's only a few changes. Essentially, the executive director of COT becomes the director of KCNA, and COT employees fulfill the KCNA roles. Essentially, the CIO of Education becomes chair of a new board, which is comprised of the constitutional officers on the board, including the governor. And at the inception of this, the existing KCNA employees are terminated, and all the money goes back to the general fund on that. And this is just a few people. COT is doing no more technical work. It's just a few administrative people there at KCNA, which are attached to the governor's office. KCNA remains attached to the governor's office. And really, these changes reflect in the Information Technology Oversight Committee. We've had a lot of testimony about the concern for customers. There's a lot of things going with lawsuits, with contracts, with all sorts of things. But customers are the focus. The reason the Chief Information Officer of Education is the board chair is because he has about 640,000 or more students that he's responsible to make sure they get what in the industry we call 5 nines of uptime, keeping them up, keeping them connected, not disrupt their school day. The executive director of COT is responsible to keep all of our agencies connected. They actually already light the network. He's going to make sure they stay connected. And at the last testimony we had of our committee, we had representatives from Internet Service Provider Association that has tens, if not hundreds of thousands of rural customers who face disconnection on a 30 days notice. And I think both of these will be very focused on keeping those rural customers connected, and the broadband grants that they are currently trying to implement going forward at cost on that. So that's really a simple change. There are obviously budget implications of this. I expect the House Budget Subcommittees to look at that and work on it. There's a lot bigger issues, but this is a holding pattern until the audit comes in next summer, so we can just maintain our customer connectivity. Next summer, the audit comes in, and then we can make a decision in 97 after that. And if there are no other questions, I'm open for questions.
Senator West has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just so I've got it correct in my mind, just one really simple question. I'm just trying to make sure you're doing what I think you're doing. So we have under Kentucky Wired, we had subs that bid on the initial contracts. Mm-hmm. They won those contracts, which that's a whole nother story, right? And they are conducting business pursuant to those contracts. Under this, all that stays in place. What I think you're saying is like these individuals at the state level were basically go-betweens anyway, right? So are you attempting to eliminate a layer of bureaucracy that you feel is like needless bureaucracy? In other words, the money will still flow the same way. It'll be the terms of the contract will be the same. Am I stating that correctly?
That's correct. And COT is already involved in this, and COT manages contracts. None of these contracts are going to go away. It's just going to be COT who already manages our technology contracts.
You're saying they're already doing a lot of this work anyway.
They're already doing this anyway, and so they can just do it without this additional layer of
Thank
technology.
you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? This was pretty much just for discussion only today.
Yes, and open it up for others to look at it and make changes or look at the budget ramifications of it in other committees.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for your attention and for those who allowed me to change the order.
Okay, next we have a presentation on geoengineering and related legislation. Again, this is pretty much the discussion only, but it's an issue that's been out there a while. Matter of fact, I had a bill concerning this about 4 years ago, I think, or 3, and so it's we didn't move it then, but I think that the discussion is even more timely now. And it's something that that we do need to understand and talk about. So, gentlemen, please introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm John Hodgson, State Representative, District 36 in Jefferson, and been working on this a couple of years with my colleagues here, and Senator Rawlings can introduce himself, but I brought with us one of the foremost aviation meteorologists in America. He's been in the practice of this for 40 years. I had the opportunity to work with him in the private sector for 30 years and used him for consulting with this for quite some time. So brought him in case there's any really hard questions I can't answer. But.
And Steve Rawlings, State Senate, District 11.
Randy Baker, retired meteorologist.
All right, Mr. Chairman, today's subject is geoengineering, and you might be asking, what is that? Well, it's an attempt by the government or non-governmental organization actors to modify the global climate or temperature, essentially playing God with the weather. You'll see here some terms thrown around like solar radiation modification. That's the idea of putting material in the upper atmosphere that's reflective to decrease the amount of sunlight that's coming to the Earth and reflect it back up into space. It's an attempt to cool the Earth for a perceived problem there. The term stratospheric aerosol injection is one way to do that. That's injecting these reflective particles way up in the atmosphere. We're talking 35,000, 50,000 feet, where it's mostly ice crystals up there. Those particles, some of them harmful, sulfur dioxide, one of the things considered, they eventually can precipitate back to Earth, of course. There's something we don't do in Kentucky because we don't have an ocean, but it's called marine cloud brightening, where they go spray salt crystals, take seawater, spray it up in the sky for it to crystallize, hoping that will reflect sunlight back into space. There's also something called cirrus cloud thinning, space-based methods. So just the general concept here, geoengineering is trying to limit the amount of sunlight striking the earth to cool the earth off. So up until recently, the EPA looked the other way on this. They didn't admit that there were activities around this at all. And the new director, Lee Zeldin, has unveiled a website that says, well, yeah, in fact, we have been doing this. In 1947, we had Project Cirrus, where they were trying to seed hurricanes with dry ice and see what would happen when they did that. Could they steer a hurricane? During the Vietnam War, Operation Popeye, classified military operation. They tried to make it rain on the Ho Chi Minh Trail and flood out the guys that were moving war materials. And then in 1971, Project Storm Fury, with NOAA and the U.S. Navy, looking to modify hurricane strength through seeding with silver iodide to reduce wind speed. So we have in fact been playing with this. I'll show you the website for NOAA just briefly for our audience here. This is the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. They have a whole website here dedicated to what is geoengineering. I'm not going to go through it, but I want to encourage you to do it. I spent a couple hours going through every link on this and explains everything about geoengineering, what the history is, what the law is, what state and federal regulations around that. And it's the first time we've had full disclosure in my lifetime of what the government has been doing with geoengineering. What's geoengineering, what government actions have been taken, and frequent questions. So if you're interested in this subject, I'd really encourage you to go to that EPA website.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Do you though see a difference between cloud seeding to cool the Earth's planet at a level of 35,000 feet or something, and some of the other things that we're talking about that have been done since 1946 at maybe 10 or 15,000 feet, relating to trying to make it rain or some
Yes,
of
sir.
these other things? It just seems to me that that we're trying to play God a lot more at 35,000 feet than we are at the lower levels.
Yes, sir. It's a good lead into the next slide
Okay.
here. What geoengineering is not.
Yeah.
The first thing that it's not is ordinary jet engine exhaust from unadulterated fuel. We've got 45,000 jet flights a day over the United States. So you get vapor trails or contrails that form behind these. These are the thin white clouds you see in the sky. They are dependent on upper atmosphere humidity, as my weatherman can explain in great detail if somebody wants to know. But if you have low humidity levels in the upper atmosphere, you don't get any vapor trails. Some days it's a perfectly blue sky. There's still 45,000 flights up there. Some days when there's a front coming in, you'll get humid conditions in the upper atmosphere and you'll be covered with vapor trails everywhere. When you burn hydrocarbon fuels at altitude, you end up getting carbon dioxide and water vapor out the back and a little bit of soot or pollutant. I mean, it is pollution, but it's mostly everything you're seeing is water vapor. And those can persist for a long time up there in the 35, 45,000 feet. And but it is dependent on humidity. And people think that something different is happening with aviation between the days that it's clear and the days that you're getting vapor trails, and it's really the same thing. It's just a difference in the upper atmosphere humidity. So there's a specific exclusion in the bill for ordinary jet aircraft exhaust to have no impact on commercial operators, UPS, DHL, Delta, Southwest, military. Crop dusting is something that happens below 500 feet above ground level. That's an agricultural activity. It's regulated with federal and state permits. That's not affected. The FAA doesn't control the airspace below 500 feet. Ground source pollution, factories, smokestacks, other earth anchored things, that's specifically excluded. And airport fog control. Sometimes we don't get a whole lot of fog here in Kentucky. Sometimes Eastern Kentucky does. They'll do things close to the ground to try to make that fog bank dissipate, but it's very local. And so those are the things that geoengineering is not. You did mention cloud seeding, and that's an activity that occurs at about 15,000 feet. And that's where they drop chemicals, usually silver iodide, into a cloud that already exists to try to make it rain a little bit more. We interviewed the gentleman that runs that company, and he said they can make, within about an hour, they can make a cloud rain about 15% more than it would otherwise, but it's very much local acting. Nonetheless, people are concerned about what happens when that silver iodide comes down on your croplands and gets in your food. There's questions about that. My understanding is it doesn't happen in Kentucky now. There are about 8 western states that issue permits for for cloud seeding, but I think that's something that's covered by this at this point because we're not sure what it does, if it works, if it's effective, and we seem to have plenty of rain in Kentucky from my recent experience. So we'll move on here. I'll pass off to.
Yep, the next slide is for the case for action in Kentucky. What's the need for this bill? So we currently don't have any prohibition on the federal government or others from carrying out weather modification or geoengineering activities in Kentucky. The chemical fallout of reflective materials or other chemicals is potentially toxic to Kentucky farmland, crops, animal agriculture, aquaculture. Potential SRM, that's solar radiation modification. Potential SRM results are not well understood and could be catastrophic, affecting crop yields, energy production, human health, animal health. Cloud seeding operations are legal in some western states, as Representative Hodgson mentioned, including Texas, with unproven effects and potential toxicity of the silver iodide used. Cloud seeding operations, I just said that. Well, the Biden White House published a study favorable to government experiments with geoengineering to support green environmental policy. The Trump White House has curtailed such studies and published the EPA disclosure website. Future federal policy is unknown. Kentucky, there is a bill filed in Congress currently, though, also. Kentucky must act now to assert its 10th Amendment sovereignty and forbid experimentation over the skies of Kentucky, joining states like Tennessee, Louisiana, and Florida. So last year, Tennessee was the first bill that passed in 2024, our neighboring state, and then Louisiana earlier this year, and then most recently in Florida. And Governor DeSantis had a quote stated on their Florida Senate Bill 56, the free state of Florida means freedom from governments or private actors unilaterally applying chemicals or geoengineering to people or public spaces. So there's been a total of 33 states that have have filed legislation. 3 have passed. All right, public concerns. More than 7 in 10 adults say they are very or somewhat concerned that solar geoengineering, 74%, or cloud seeding, 72%, will be used before we fully understand how they affect the Earth's ecosystems. And Representative Hodgson and I know some of you have been receiving so much correspondence and emails from our citizens. They really want this bill. And that's something we've experienced in the last few years. We have more and more people that are really concerned. But critics warn that techniques like aerosol injection may worsen air pollution or trigger severe weather events. Although cloud seeding has been used for over 80 years, its effectiveness remains unproven by scientific standards and questioned by experts due to lack of reliable evidence. And the GAO is the Government Accountability Office, and they cite this now. They're still saying that it's unreliable due to a lack of reliable evidence. Some scientists caution that cloud seeding could lead to extreme droughts or flooding under certain conditions, like the recent Texas flood and Dubai also. The Texas flood, the company that we talked to, they were cloud seeding in Texas on July 2nd, and then the flooding occurred on July 4th. Now, they say that it's unrelated, but it's just a matter of 2 days. And then in Dubai, it was described as a once in a 1,000-year flood, and they were cloud seeding in Dubai at the time. And then we talked to the representative, too, about Roswell, New Mexico, because that was also described as a 1 in a 1,000-year event. But he said that they were cloud seeding in a different part of New Mexico, so they used that as an excuse. But anyway, it's a huge concern for people. So Kentucky geoengineering ban forbids atmospheric polluting intervention. It means any manipulation or interference with the Earth's natural systems or processes by altering atmospheric or environmental conditions, including, but not limited to, stratospheric aerosol injection, that's SAI, cloud seeding, which is something different, and then solar radiation modification, and the intentional release of an atmospheric contaminant. But that does exclude any release from a ground level source such as industrial or commercial facility, residence, vehicle, agriculture operation that occurs in the atmosphere that may have harmful consequences. So the bill specifically allows for that, such as crop crop dusting.
Okay.
I think Senator Wheeler has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you're describing this, I was trying to think. It may have been you said this technology's been around for a while, and it seems like I remember either a Scooby-Doo or a Looney Tunes cartoon where the plane dumps the dry ice into the clouds. Is that essentially what we're talking about to make it rain?
Yes, sir. Specifically with cloud seeding, that's carried out 15,000 feet from the ground inside a cloud, so you probably wouldn't see anybody cloud seeding. They actually do it with drones now, but it is essentially the Scooby-Doo technology that you referenced. So
Okay, that's what I thought. All right.
dry ice or silver iodide has a molecular structure that looks like crystals of ice, and it can precipitate.
As I'll say, I don't know why. I guess from my youth, I distinctly remember this episode or something where they did that to make fog or rain or something. Okay. I guess secondly, I mean, if we were to pass this law, I assume if we would it be federally preempted? I guess if there came a regulation out of Washington, or clearly a bill would probably federally preempt any state regulation, would it not?
Well, I think what we're trying to do in part with this is to drive a stake in the ground and say we are asserting our 10th Amendment sovereignty here, that you're not going to come experiment in the skies over Kentucky. That's really the essence of it. So the feds could pass a supporting bill, which is the direction I think we're going right now.
Yep.
As political winds change in 2 years or 4 years, you could end up with somebody saying, we're going to mandate this federally, and our bill would still say no in the skies over Kentucky. And I believe I would certainly have my lawyers go after the 10th Amendment and say you can't spray stuff on us
I think
without our
it's a
consent.
very unused amendment. I totally agree with you, but it seems like jurisprudence, and at least since the 1930s, has kind of gone against against the use of it to some degree.
Well,
And there was a bill filed in Congress in July, a weather modification bill.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Whitaker.
My question sort of goes along those lines. I am in a border district. There's a hostile nation to my east called Virginia. That what I'm wondering about is we're clearly protecting the skies over Kentucky, but we've got states all around us. How does their geoengineering, which they can do whatever they want, I suppose, from the ground in Virginia up to the heavens, how do we? Will this protect us from other states doing their thing? As far as weather goes, will other states affect us with geoengineering?
Randy.
One analogy I can mention is the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815, which is where the geoengineering folks got their idea. It ejected a tremendous amount of sulfur dioxide into the upper stratosphere that lingered for years. And the next summer, 1816, was called the year without a summer. There were crop failures and snow in New England and in Europe. Very devastating. But when people realized what was going on, how sulfur dioxide in the upper atmosphere could reduce incoming sunlight, people who are concerned about a warming globe thought, aha, we got something we can do. So the problem is it can really be injected from anywhere in the world and affect the entire globe.
But I think, again, this is somewhat symbolic that we want to assert our sovereignty and say, and 33 other states are following suit. And I think if we get a patchwork quilt of laws around the country, it makes it more likely that Congress will pass a ban, and we could eventually get a global ban. But personally, I just think it's kind of crazy to think we're going to play God and modify the weather and not have adverse consequences from it.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing this. I know it takes a lot of technical knowledge to bring forth a bill like this, so thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Representative Watkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions just for clarity and knowledge sake, more so on the research side of this. I think the first, and I think Representative, you may have spoken to the validity of enforcement that I'm looking at, but how would we know, I guess, as a state, if just say a research institution decides to have a drone or a satellite or something of the sort to do any weather modification, but more so geoengineering, how would we know and detect that?
Certainly, it'd be possible for someone to do that without detection. If you had, a CIA flying an unidentified plane at night, you would never know. But to rig up an airplane to do high altitude spraying would be extraordinarily expensive. It's 56 degrees below zero up there, so you got to have, tanks of chemicals and spray nozzles. It'd be very hard to hide unless you're, landing at some secret military base. If you land at Standerford Field, where I've got hundreds of friends that are pilots and mechanics, I would know by this afternoon. So nobody could really do this in secret unless they were operating with a, blacked out airplane at a, secret base at night. So I think it would be somewhat obvious because it's hard to get to 35,000 feet. And like I say, it's 50 degrees below zero, so everything's going to freeze up there. So,
I can add one thing. With the current geostationary satellite imagery that we have, there are certain signatures for sulfur dioxide that we see from volcanoes. So any large-scale release of sulfur dioxide would be visible no matter what altitude, what time of day.
And last for me, Mr. Chair, is just do we know currently if there are any weather modification or geoengineering active or planned in the state?
In Kentucky?
In Kentucky.
No, there's not that we are aware of.
Okay.
No. There has been experimentation within the U.S. And in foreign countries, but not here.
I didn't think there were any in the state.
Yeah.
none that we know of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to, you mentioned Texas, that there was some evidence that I guess a private company did that 2 days before the major flood. I mean, have there ever been any successful causes of action in court, for damages or destruction that you're aware of as a result of these activities?
Not successful. There is some litigation going on right now, but it's very early. The company we talked to is Rainmaker, and they're the ones that are really getting a lot of business, and they're very successful. So when we spoke with them by a Zoom call, they explained how they target these clouds, and so they will say they target a certain cloud. It had nothing to do with the flooding in Texas, but we're concerned about the ball bouncing. If you do this, it causes this. If it does this, it causes this. We're just very concerned. There's a term I just saw, the potential for cascading failures. I thought that sounded pretty accurate. That's a real concern.
No, I understand. I guess I was from the standpoint of I didn't know if this science or these theories as far as causing damages to areas, death, destruction of property, whatever, has it ever actually been tested, so to speak, in a court of law
Not to my knowledge.
or some other?
He very specifically said what they do is at 15,000 feet that it has, an active range of maybe a couple of thousand acres, and it takes effect within 45 minutes to an hour and a half. And they only use a small amount of silver iodide because it's very expensive.
I mean,
So he said it was actually 20 hours from when he quit seeding until when the flood event started, and it was a different group of clouds. So he's adamant that they did not cause this. I'm not so sure about what happened in Dubai. I think there may have been a proximal cause when they had that 1,000-year flood in Dubai.
I'm shocked to even talk to you. If I had him as a client, I'd say no, I wouldn't talk to these guys.
But he has no clients in Kentucky. To my knowledge, there are no current cloud seeding.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it doesn't mean he can't get a video of this hearing and use it in a lawsuit in the state of Texas. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. But thanks.
Well, there's a concern too about stealing moisture. That's something we've talked about. Like if you can't create moisture, so you're stealing it from the surrounding states. So there's that issue too.
But there are about eight western states that actively issue state permits for cloud seeding, and they'll try to have it rain or snow over a ski area, for instance, or over some cropland, very dry western states. So, but he says he's got documentary, Doppler radar kind of evidence that he can make it boost rainfall by about 15%. That's their business claim, and he's doing a good business out west.
Senator Elkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So much like Senator Wheeler, I can remember as a young man, I was that at one time, believe it or not, being in high school and hearing about, or maybe it was middle school even, but I heard about cloud seeding, and I was fascinated by that. And I I could have never dreamt that we'd be sitting here talking about it 40, 50 years later. But to that, I know that I'm always concerned with unintended consequences, and I feel like we see that often in our foods that we eat. I know that I'm certain that we have it with the growth hormones we inject into our beef and our poultry, and that transfers into us as we consume it. So I'm careful with that. What do you see are the unintended consequences if we don't act now to do something about this weather modification that most certainly I think is going on in some places? I at one time questioned whether it even went on or not, but I do believe now that it does go on, and I do think there probably are some unintended consequences. You guys are the experts on it. What do you see as those unintended long-term consequences?
Yeah, we spoke earlier about you could stretch this out into forever chemicals. We're worried about these forever chemicals now, finding them everywhere. And then we've got different things. What was the other one? Nanoparticles. Things.
We have
like
things like PFAS that we're finding now
PFAS,
in our own bloodstreams
forever
now.
chemicals.
So,
Yeah.
Just a very simple example. If you want to reflect sunlight back, one of the easiest things to do is to put little tiny aluminum flakes at 50,000 feet. It'll stay up there for a while, but guess what? It eventually precipitates out, gets in your farmland, and gets dissolved and comes up in the crops that you're eating, and aluminum is toxic to your body. So that's one of, potentially dozens of examples of things you really don't want falling on your cropland or in your water that you're drinking.
Yeah, there's so many different things, like ozone depletion is a concern. Of course, we discussed impacts on the weather patterns causing droughts or floods, possible acid rain, the impacts on agriculture, the impacts on solar power, if we're blocking the sunlight with little aluminum particles, And then I mentioned before the thing about cascading failures and unforeseen consequences, you say. So it is a real concern that the people have just had enough of it. We want to turn this around, stop it where we can.
You may remember the Canadian wildfires a year or two ago.
I do. Still today, even. Yeah,
I've got a small solar array on my roof, and the smoke was so bad that my solar production, which I can monitor from my phone, was down about 20% for months. And it left soot on the panels. I had to pay to have somebody come, clean them off. But, we're putting in huge solar fields, and we're having parts of the grid rely on all this solar energy. If you're doing modification above there, you could cut your solar output 10, 20, 50%, depending on how much you reflect.
And the latest thing in the news is plastics. They're finding plastics in people's bodies and even their brains. So these are all things that we need to address. So this is our attempt at addressing one of those things.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize in advance if I missed this, and you've already stated it, but in your presentation with the bill you're proposing, you have the different levels of weather modification, right? And we talk specifically about cloud seeding, which is licensed out west in various states. So would your bill prohibit cloud seeding itself? Mm-hmm. It would be one of those included
It would, yes.
Courses of conduct that would be prohibited. Is that right?
Yes. And I don't believe we have any current body of law that allows cloud seeding. So the western states all have a body of law that does that. And there's a whole permitting process. You have to get a permit from the federal government as well as the state. And
right.
We don't have that structure in place.
So there's nothing against it, right? They can do it. It's the Wild West, right? But that was my main question. That is included in.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Representative Fugit. What? Okay. Representative Ballman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you guys for bringing this good bill forward. I do have a question as it relates to enforcement, and I see the words on the page here. I appreciate that. But for the folks perhaps watching or that can't read this today, could you maybe describe in practice how you see the enforcement mechanism of this policy playing out?
From a practical standpoint, and I spent my whole adult life in commercial jet aviation, you would have to have a whistleblower. You can't sit on the ground and see an airplane coming overhead and say, aha, he's doing stratospheric aerosol injection. Could just be jet exhaust. But that airplane's got to land somewhere, and if they're injecting chemicals, they've got to have spray nozzles of some kind. They've got to have tanks. Somebody will know. There'll be ground support crews, engineers, pilots, chemical people. Somebody will see that somewhere, and they would have to blow the whistle and say this is going on. So people sometimes think that there are, commercial jet aircraft up there, spraying us. That's virtually impossible. I think for that to happen with thousands of ground crew, pilots, and mechanics to not have a picture of that or blow the whistle, somebody would out that if it was happening. But I think this enforcement would require a whistleblower, found evidence on the ground of what's being put up in the air.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Proceed. We don't have any other questions, evidently.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. I think that this discussion shows that there is a lot of questions about this and a lot of interest in this. And I know personally, myself, I just don't see what could go wrong when man starts trying to play God. I mean, it's, obviously lots of things can go wrong. And so I do appreciate your work on this, and there's no question that you've done a lot of study on this issue. So something I'm hopeful that we'll hear at the session that starts in January. So
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah, our next meeting, we think, is September the 18th. It's the second Thursday. No, that wouldn't be right. Be the third Thursday, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. Third Thursday. All right. Anyone else have anything to bring before the committee? Not? What? Motion to adjourn. So moved.